Good morning, welcome. Good morning. Welcome to the open hour. Welcome to the webinar. We'll just wait a little while, see who else is coming. So buongiorno, welcome to the webinar. This is a webinar organized by the Italian Focal Point for IPCC. I'm Anna Pirani, I'm the Focal Point alternate. The webinar will be in English. Everyone is welcome, also experts who are not based in Italy, since we provide general information. Here we're talking about the call for experts for the scoping meeting of the methodology report on carbon dioxide removal technologies and carbon capture, utilization and storage. It's a methodological report that is being prepared by the IPCC as part of its 7th assessment cycle. So we just wait a couple more minutes and then we get started. Well, I think the list is seemingly quite stable. So let's get going on time. So as I said, I'm Anna Pirani. I'm the Focal Point alternate for Italy. I'll be explaining a little bit more about the process that is involved with the scoping of a report for the IPCC so that it is clear what this call for experts is. You will have seen perhaps on the IPCC website or on the Focal Point for Italy website the information about this call. It's not for the authorship of the methodology report. We're at the first step of the preparation of the report, so we will be having a scoping meeting. I have with me Giacomo Grassi. I'm very happy to introduce Giacomo to you all. He is elected member of the IPCC Task Force on Greenhouse Gas Inventories. He's based at the Joint Research Centre of the European Commission, which is a European institute, but it's based in Italy. And he was selected as an Italian candidate for the IPCC Bureau last July when we had the elections at the start of the 7th assessment cycle. So I'm really happy that Giacomo is here, because before I go into what the scoping meeting is, I'm going to give the floor to Giacomo. He will give you an introduction to what the Task Force Bureau on Greenhouse Gas Inventories does, a little bit of information about this particular methodology report. And if you have any questions, you're very welcome to put them in the question and answers box. We can answer them, orally, or we will be responding in the chat. So feel free to just ask questions as we go along. And with that, I give the floor to Giacomo. Thank you.
So good morning to everybody. Can you listen and see the screen?
Yes, very well. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. Let's start with the IPCC structure that I guess many of you are familiar with. You have from the top to the bottom the IPCC plenary, the Bureau, the Executive Committee, but then you have these 4 siblings, I would call, from the IPCC. You have the Working Group 1 that deals with the physical science basis, produce every cycle a report on that. The Working Group 3 is about impacts, adaptation, and vulnerability. The Working Group 3 produce report on mitigation of climate change. And there is a 4th sibling that sometimes is forgotten. The forgotten sibling is less known to the wider public. It is the Task Force on National Gas Inventory, where in WAS Bureau I have been elected as Anna explained. The justification for these, for having such a bureau, comes directly from the UNFCCC Foundation, United Nations Convention on Climate Change, that explains in its Article 4.1 that parties shall develop, periodically update, publish, and make available national inventory of anthropogenic emissions removal of greenhouse gas emission, using comparable methodologies to agreed upon by the conference of the parties, and highlighted in bold some keywords that will come back later on that. The Task Force on National Greenhouse Inventory aims to, first of all, develop and refine internationally agreed methodologies and software for the calculation and reporting of national greenhouse gas inventory and removal, and also encourage the widespread use of these methods and software. This work is done upon the request of IPCC member governments, and is managed by a bureau with the 2 elected co-chairs and a technical support unit that is based in Japan. To give you a sense of the importance of the national inventory in the Paris Agreement, I use this analogy and put the Paris Agreement to a car. And we have 3 actors here. We have the driver, that are the policymaker that hold the steering wheel, decide the speed and the direction. Then you have the navigation systems that are somehow the models that originate that are reflected in the work of Working Group 1 and 3. Say they provide an independent assessment of where we are with the climate challenge, and which are the possible route to reach specific destination. In Paris, the driver has chosen to stay well below 2 degrees compared to industrial times, and the models provide a number of options. But then we have the other element, which is the car dashboard, that provide essential information to the driver and also essential information to the policymaker, because national inventory are the foundation of national climate policy, and also to assess the compliance of the countries with respect to their pledges under the Paris Agreement. And we noticed that in recent years, the policy focus is shifting from pledges to implementation. Until 2 or 3 years ago, until the Glasgow COP, most of the policy focus, the media focus, was on countries, please make more ambitious pledges so that you can be online with what models consider compatible with the Paris Agreement. Now we have a wide number of pledges. They're far from perfect, but we have them. Now the focus is more on implementation, which is reflected in national greenhouse gas inventories. And to give an idea of what the model illustrates as compatible with the Paris Agreement, these are standardized pathway. And any model pathway compatible with the Paris Agreement outline the need of a rapid reduction of fossil fuel emission, especially CO2. And here I want to highlight the green part, the one below 0, because the more we know that we can't bring to 0 all sources of CO2 emission and no CO2 emission. So to reach net 0, which is necessary to eventually stabilize the temperature, we need to compensate with removals. And this is one of the topic of the scoping meeting, so the CDR, the carbon dioxide removal. And the relative importance of CO2 removal will increase with time as long as we approach net 0. So coming back to the work of the Task Force on Inventory, TFI, the main work is to produce methodology report. So why producing this report? The aim is to provide globally applicable standardized methodology and emission factor to ensure consistency and comparability among the car dashboards of the various cars. The process for producing the methodological report is quite similar to the one of the assessment report, which is probably more known by many of you. There are typically quite often expert meetings that preparing supporting material for the scoping meeting. Then there will be a scoping meeting, which is the reason for this webinar. And the scoping meeting is then, the outline of the scoping meeting is approved by an IPCC plenary. And then there is the development of regular lead author meetings and a review process. I will explain it better. And then finally, the approval of methodological report by the IPCC panel. The main methodological report that over time has been developed and coordinated by the TFI are the IPCC guidelines. The 2006 IPCC guidelines are currently the mandatory methodology for all parties to report their national gas inventory under UNFCCC and the Paris Agreement. A refinement of these guidelines has been produced in 2019 and can be used by parties on a voluntary basis. The IPCC guidelines allow countries to produce estimates of greenhouse gas emission consistent with so-called TAC reporting principle under UNFCCC. These 5 principles are transparency, accuracy, comparability, consistency, and completeness. So every inventory should adhere and follow this reporting principle decided by parties. The IPCC methodology aims to guide the development of greenhouse gas estimation based on a common understanding. And the aim is to ensure comparability among countries, to avoid double counting or emission, and to reflect a complete time series that reflect as much as possible the actual change, anthropogenic change in emission. But then here, a tricky point is what we define with anthropogenic emission and removal. This is clear for most sectors. I mean, all sectors have emission to the atmosphere. There is one sector which is far more complicated than all the others for at least 2 reasons. First of all, is the land sector. First of all, you have both emission to the atmosphere and removal from the atmosphere to the land. But then these emissions are part of the natural carbon cycle. Therefore, it's extremely difficult to disentangle what is the anthropogenic part with the natural part. And we'll come back on that later. The TFI works also on that topic. So a very basic crash course on the IPCC guidance. I'll go very, very quick here. I'll leave you maybe more time to read in the slide later. But essentially, the guidance provide not really a standardized guidance, but a good practice. Good practice means a set of procedures that intend to ensure that inventories are accurate in the sense that are systematically neither over nor underestimated as far can be judged. A good practice is provided for 3 tiers level of increasing methodological complexity and presumed accuracy. The tier 1 is the basic default method, which used emission factor provided by the IPCC. Tier 3 is the most demanding in terms of complexity and data requirement. Has the highest spatial and temporal resolution and often uses complex models. The aim of the IPCC guidance is to provide methodology that all countries can use. So the tier 1 is specifically aimed to be universal. So countries have no excuse not to provide estimates with tier 1. In the context of the 7th assessment cycle, the IPCC plenary, so the IPCC member government, has tasked the TFI with the production of two methodology reports. The first one is on short-lived climate forces. We already had a number of expert meetings last years, and we had a few months ago the scoping meeting. And another report is about carbon dioxide removal technology and carbon capture, utilization, and storage. That is the trigger of this webinar. CDR include anthropogenic activity that removes CO2 from the atmosphere and store durably in geological, terrestrial, or ocean reservoirs. And it exclude natural CO2 uptake, not directly caused by human activities. And CCU and CCUS is are processing which CO2 is captured from industrial and energy-related sources and then is used in product or stored. Here is another view of what IPCC, how the IPCC described these processes of the interlinking. among them, and a list of relevant expertise that is requested for the scoping meeting of CDR and CCUS. A tentative production timeline for the two methodological report is outlined in this slide. So we will, for the carbon dioxide removal, we'll have the expert meeting in next week in Vienna, and the scoping meeting for which there is this call for nomination will be held in the second half of October, tentatively. Then the outline of the scoping meeting will be approved by the IPCC plenary, the next one, and then the call of nomination for authors and review authors will launched. A couple of lead author meetings are planned for 2025. Then, in a manner that is quite resembles quite closely what happens in the assessment report, there are three rounds of review. The first two are expert review. The second and third are governmental review. And then there is the final adoption acceptance, which is anyway lighter than the adoption acceptance of the summary for policymaker of the assessment report, where, as you know, the adoption is line by line. Here is a lighter form of adoption acceptance, but still it is approved by all parties. Other ongoing activities from the TFI includes the management of the IPCC software, which provides support, especially from developing countries, to use the IPCC methodology, especially Tier 1. Then the management of the emission factor database, which is a living database that is updated on a regular basis to provide countries the latest numbers that they can use in their Tier 1 estimates. And then there are a number of support activities, including training program and IPCC software demonstration workshop. There will be one in early September. And then expert meeting, as I mentioned, there is one next week on CDR, and there is another one in a couple of weeks in ISPRA where I work on reconciling land use estimates. And I conclude with a couple of slides on that because I'm organizing that expert meeting. The expert meeting is about a gap that has been recently found on land use emission estimates between global models and national gross inventory. You see in the left figure, the red and the blue lines are those that you can find in the sixth assessment report. So if you look what the sixth assessment report says about land use LULUCF emission, well, they say that currently there is a quite large emission from LULUCF, around 5 gigatons of CO2, and the red ones are scenarios from the integrated assessment model according to various pathways. But we found out that actually country reporting report a totally different story. So essentially the car dashboard do not match at all with what the navigation system says on how much on the basic information for the driver. The driver might get very confused. So country data says, hey, look, at global level, actually LULUCF is a quite significant sink. Since the country data for the historical period and the future need to be compared with the model's data for the global stocktake, for example, this mismatch creates a lot of concern in the scientific community and in the policy maker. Essentially, the topic here is an outline of the global carbon budget. You see on the left, there are anthropogenic emissions, mostly from fossil fuel, partly from deforestation. On the right, you have where this emission ends to. Nearly half remains in the atmosphere, a quarter is absorbed by ocean, and nearly a third is absorbed by land, mostly forest. Well, the problem that we have in the figure on the left, this large mismatch on land use estimates, is due to different approaches to define anthropogenic sink. Actually, in other words, different system boundaries. So the global models call LULUCF sector in global models the box highlighted in yellow, while country have a broader system boundary and include also a large part of the sink, of the CO2 sink that models call it natural. So country call anthropogenic, something that models call it natural. This has relevant implication for assessing collective progress, the remaining carbon budget and net zero, and the confidence on land use estimates on the Paris Agreement, because policymakers can understandably get very confused about this wide range of estimates. The IPCC expert meeting will hold in Israel in a couple of weeks. Will gather experts from a wide range of community, the community that are behind the Working Group I report, the Working Group III report, the National Greenhouse Inventory, and somehow in the middle, the community working on Earth observation, which also provide increasingly a number of independent estimates on land use. Aim is to develop a common understanding of the reason of this land emission gap, set the basis for greater collaboration across community, and outline a concrete step forward that each community can take to ensure greater comparability within the future IPCC products and national greenhouse inventory data. The challenge is to have the next AR7 products that provide estimates speaking somehow the same language of country to ensure that the navigation system speak the same, use the same metric of the car dashboard. To conclude and to further remark the importance of the national greenhouse inventory methods and numbers is that if you don't measure well, we can't manage well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Giacomo. That was a very nice presentation, very comprehensive. I hope it was useful for everybody to see more about what the Task Force on Greenhouse Gas Inventories does. It's a part of the IPCC, but maybe it's a little less visible. So very useful to have this presentation and also to set the scene for this, this methodology report. And so now we'll talk more about what the scoping process is about. There have been just a couple of questions via chatting. I did reply, but maybe I just want to ask you, Giacomo, for your feedback on one of the questions. Anna Lehner is asking whether industry experts that are working on durable CDR are relevant for the scoping meeting. I answered that in my view, yes, but I mean, I think it would be nice also to hear from your perspective.
Yes, I mean, you can find the expertise required in one of my slides, and I think if it fits within that, I think it could be worth for you to apply if it is your expertise.
Thank you. I don't know if there are any other questions now that you've seen Giacomo's presentation. We may also be able to give you the floor. I think we have the ability to you can intervene orally. If you'd like to raise your hand, we can also give you the floor. We're not too many people here. And just as I wait a second, in case anyone is thinking of a question, still building on the expertise and the types of profiles for this kind of activity. It is very much true that IPCC is typically based on scientific expertise. So when you see the application form, it does ask for peer-reviewed publications to be highlighted. But in this cycle, I think there's a lot of interest in bringing practitioners into the process. So from industry and also other sectors. And so important publications that might not be in the peer-reviewed literature. So for example, industry reports or other types of reporting can be highlighted in these applications. And I think they will be very much appreciated and evaluated positively. Anyway, there don't seem to be any questions. So now I share my presentation. Here we go. So some of you joined a bit later than when we started. I just reintroduced myself. I'm Anna Pirani. I'm the IPCC Focal Point alternate for Italy. I'm based at the Euro-Mediterranean Center on Climate Change. And these webinars that we organize are for everybody. They're open because, as you can see, we're speaking in English. The IPCC process is in English. And so we give a sort of standard information that is relevant for experts who are not necessarily based in Italy. But just to clarify that when you do apply for these activities, you do need to go through your own national focal point. So we will be submitting the applications from experts based in Italy. And if you have any questions, again, on that, we can come back to this. So just to introduce you to the focal point role, we are here to connect the national scientific and technical communities, also the policymaking communities in Italy to the IPCC process. And in addition, we represent Italy at the plenary sessions. So the IPCC is an intergovernmental body, and at the plenary sessions, the governments are meeting together. So we obviously represent IPCC in Italy, and we do a lot of communication and outreach activities to familiarize people with the IPCC and the outcomes of these assessments. So the CMCC has been providing this service to the Ministry for the Environment and Energy Security since 2006. And here I introduce to you the focal point Antonio Navarra and myself. And you may have already seen this very nice website. We have a full team from the CMCC communications team, Mauro, Marina, Agnese, Ottavia, and others who support this work. And so we do a very important communication service, I think, presenting the information, translating information into Italian, sharing also didactic information or definitional, more conceptual information to support understanding the content of these reports. And you can find all of this on the website. And you can also sign up for our newsletter. And as you see, you probably received maybe this information from the newsletter. Everybody is welcome to join this network. So just to introduce the 7th assessment report, there was a plenary in January this year where the work plan of the IPCC was decided. There was already a decision on producing a special report on climate change and cities, and the scoping meeting just took place recently, and a methodology report on short-lived climate forces, which also held its scoping meeting earlier this year. And these will be produced by the early 2027. And then this is the carbon dioxide removal technologies and carbon capture utilization methodology report, but there is also an expert meeting just happening shortly, as Giacomo said, in the next month. And the methodology report is due by the end of 2027. Then the AR7 will consist of the 3 working group reports: the physical science basis, impacts, adaptation, vulnerability, mitigation of climate change. And in addition, there is an important update that will be produced alongside the Working Group 2 reports of the technical guidelines on impacts, adaptation, including information on indicators, metrics, and methodologies. And finally, at the end of the cycle, there will be a synthesis report, and this will be produced by the end of at the latest by 2029. So just to show you what the 7th cycle is all about, what's happening, it started in July last year with the elections, and that's where Giacomo was elected. There are representatives from around the world who are selected in the bureaus of the working groups and of the Task Force on Greenhouse Gas Inventories. And then shortly after, we had the global stocktake. So this is an important context for the 7th cycle, and indeed was reflected on at the start of our decisions on the work program, as I was saying just now, earlier this year. So just to show you what's happened so far, there have been 2 scoping meetings already, and we will be meeting actually at the end of July to agree on the outlines of those 2 special reports, or methodology and special reports. And from that approved outline, then there is the call for the authors. We're talking here about the scoping meeting of the Task Force CDR and CCUS methodology report that will happen, I believe, in the second half of October this year. And then the 3 working group reports will be scoped in December, and the outlines, both of the CDR CCUS report and the working group reports, will be approved early 2025, probably in February. And after that, you will be hearing about the call for authorship. And once the outlines are approved, then the process begins. And all of this will be happening in the context of the 2nd global stocktake that will happen in 2028. Alongside all of this work, you'll also be hearing information about expert meetings, workshops, co-sponsored events. So a lot will be going on in this cycle. Now, just to show you a little bit the process of producing one of these reports. They are very similar, the way they are produced: the working group reports, the special reports, and the methodology reports. And what's interesting to see is the interaction between governments and the technical experts. So at the beginning, there is this process I just briefly mentioned, an approval of an outline, and then nomination of experts to be authors, and then the bureaus will select those authors. And then the work begins, and this is all in the blue, on preparing the actual reports, and it's a formal cyclical process with a series of reviews where the authors are working on the successive drafts, responding to each review comment, And towards the end, the governments become involved again, and they start commenting on the later drafts of the reports, in the case of the working groups, also of the summary for policymakers. And this final step is, I guess, illustrating more a main assessment report, but it's not so different for a methodology report. There is a process to review the final documents, and then there is a session with the governments to accept and approve the reports. And finally, after that, the report is published. And so here we are right at the beginning. And so just so that it's very clear, we're talking about the scoping meeting at this stage. So what is the scoping meeting of an IPCC report? It's a really unique moment in the process of developing these products. And the reason we hold these meetings, these open webinars, is because I think it's fair to say they're very different from any other meeting that's going on. Like, it's not like a symposium, it's not a workshop, it's not a typical meeting where experts are generally engaged in. So the aim of this scoping meeting is just to develop the proposal for the structure and the content of the report. So what it comes out with is a series of chapters, titles of chapters, the title of the reports, and an indicative content of those chapters. And that is what the governments will agree on. And it's really important because obviously you can imagine from those keywords and the structure, you can imagine what the final product will be like. It's a really important balance to come out of the scoping meeting with an outline that isn't too vague. And so when authors are selected, there is an unknown, as it were, of what this, the orientation of this report is intended to be. This is certainly something that governments wouldn't accept, too vague outline, but also that is not too prescriptive. So that the point is, in the IPCC process, experts come into the work, and it's their expertise that drives the contents ultimately. So you don't want to have a scoped outline that is too prescriptive. It should just indicate the key areas, and then it's up to the experts to really develop this. So the process of a scoping meeting, often there are pre-scoping webinars to help all participants, often coming from very diverse backgrounds, have a common starting point, also to understand the objectives of the meeting. There are preparatory documents that are supplied to participants beforehand. And then there is the meeting itself. And it's all rotating around 3 to 4 to 5 day meeting. Maybe Giacomo can clarify the expectation for this meeting. It might be just 3 days or 4 days. So the meeting is generally run in a series of high-level scene-setting presentations, and then a mixture of bottom-up versus top-down approaches to bring the perspectives of all the experts that have been brought together from around the world to brainstorm on the content, to hear proposals, hear pitches for what is most important. This often happens in breakout groups. And then this is discussed in a plenary stocktake type mode where you build consensus around everybody on the way forward. And the Scientific Steering Committee, which is often the bureau of, for example, in this case, the Task Force on Greenhouse Gas Inventories, will move the process forward with their own meetings and guide the way of the meeting is evolving. And finally, at the end, there is a consensus plenary and a final agreement amongst participants on the outline. So this is roughly the scope. You go from a brainstorming phase, identify key themes, chapters, the chapter structure, and then you result in an indicative outline. And then the meetings are actually quite complex meetings that eventually result in this agreed outline. This is what it can be like. These are some pictures of the Working Group I scoping meeting for the 6th assessment report. We were in Addis Ababa. It's a very intense meeting. You can see from the screen, things are going in every direction. So the bottom-up process can be intense, and there is a steering process that moves this forward. A lot of subgroups of the steering committee discussions to move the process forward. And then finally, in plenary, everybody is working through the content so that people are happy and endorse the outcome of this meeting. It's very important to bring everybody around the outcome. Obviously, as I said, people are coming from diverse backgrounds, diverse contexts and perspectives. So again, these are the scoping meeting objectives, but I wanted to show you, again, this is an example from a working group, an assessment report. This was the special report on 1.5, global warming of 1.5, that was coordinated across the 3 working groups back at the start of the 6th assessment cycle. And you see an example of an outcome for a chapter. It tells you the title, and it shows you a series of bullet points which indicate key areas and a sort of a narrative across these key areas that will be addressed in this chapter. I won't read them out, you can see them for yourself. But what you can imagine, you have to build a narrative for this chapter, and you have to build a narrative for the whole report. So it's an interesting process overall. So once it's submitted to the plenary, it's in a decision document. It is supported by an information note that explains why the structure came about. And then once the outline is decided upon, the call for authors will be opened. So for the call for nominations, you will have seen on the IPCC website or on the Italy Focal Point website, these are the areas of expertise. So when you open the nomination form, it's an Excel form, you will see all of these listed, and I believe you have to select 8 and no more than 8. So these are the areas of expertise in relation to CDR, and here are the ones in relation to CCUS. So the selection of the participants is undertaken, in this case, by the Task Force Bureau, and there are criteria which the IPCC uses for selecting participants in its work. It's clearly the scientific, technical, and socioeconomic expertise. There is a need to have a broad range of views. There is an important geographical representation that needs to be implemented to be relevant and policy relevant across the different regions of the world. And it's important to have a mixture of experts with and without previous experience in the IPCC. So those with experience certainly know how the IPCC process works and what is feasible and what might be a bit too much or too ambitious. There's a mixture of building ambition with reality in these processes. So bringing in those without experience, so if you have not participated before, don't feel you shouldn't apply, because obviously you bring a whole new perspective, and that's interesting for everybody. Gender balance is another important criteria. And then, as I was mentioning earlier in responding to Anna's question, there is increasingly effort being made to bring in backgrounds that are not just scientific, typically scientific backgrounds, but also from other sectors, also civil society organizations, from administration, governance bodies, and so on. So industry is certainly one of those. So how to apply, and this is specifically instructions for experts based in Italy. You will apply through the Focal Point of Italy. And you see here the email address, it's ipcc.fp@cmcc.it, but the rest applies to everybody else as well. So you would need to go through your national focal points, but you have to follow these steps. There is an Excel nomination form, and you're requested to fill in all the required fields. Be careful because, as I said, I think it says 8 areas of expertise maximum. If you put more, we can't upload it. It's blocked in the uploading process. So don't be going beyond what it's asking for. You need to provide a CV, 2 to 4 pages in PDF format with a maximum file size. Again, it won't be uploadable onto the system of the IPCC. And for Italy, we need to receive candidates from Italy by Friday, 5th of June. And the actual deadline for the IPCC is later in July, but we are not able to process them later than the 5th of July because of holidays. And logistically, we're not able to process them after the 5th of July. So in this case, we have a deadline which is maybe a couple of weeks earlier than the actual IPCC itself. So if you do not follow these guidelines, and these are just standard logistical guidelines, shall we say, of the nomination, they will not be considered in the selection process. We ourselves cannot do the rest. We're not going to be modifying file sizes of CVs and changing your application form to fit the requirements to upload them. Another thing that's very important for candidates coming from Italy, we as Focal Points do not have funding allocated to support your travel. So in this case for the scoping meeting, but also going forwards when we are calling authors to become nominations to become authors, there are a series of meetings that are involved. For travel, candidates from Italy will need to be covered by their own institute. So you will need to have the endorsement from your institute that they will cover your fees to travel to these meetings. Right, so that's the end of explaining what the scoping meeting is about. And obviously, if there are questions, very happy to discuss them. Just to say, from the Focal Point of Italy perspective, forthcoming activities, we will be representing Italy at the IPCC plenary sessions. I'm a member of the Italian delegation for the UNFCCC process. So this is part of the package, as it were. We undertake coordination activities and consultation activities broadly to try and support how we work as Italy within the IPCC context. We'll be supporting authors and participants to scoping meetings. So if you're selected, we'll be discussing further together to prepare you for the meetings. And we'll continue doing these kind of open hour sessions, sort of informal sessions, open to everyone, to discuss the various stages of the IPCC assessment. So also how you can participate in, as an author, what it means, how you can be a contributing author, how you can be an expert reviewer, and so on and so forth. And obviously a lot of communication, capacity building. We do a lot of information from the news for the media, and we welcome suggestions. So if you have ideas for things we could be doing, please let us know. So with that, thank you very much again for joining this session. I stop there and stop sharing as well. So I can see also if there are some questions. And feel free to raise your hand and we try and give you the floor. I saw a hand go up and then go back down again. But let me check if there are any questions. If somebody would like to raise their hand, you're welcome. I will try to read the questions as well. I see Sebastiano is trying. Maybe if you would like to come in, perhaps we can give you the floor.
I have to. Okay, you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, the question is the expert himself that send the application, or we have to send the application as a Ministry of Environment and Energy Security?
Yes, thank you. That's good to clarify this. So you would send your nomination to the Focal Point of Italy, and then the Focal Point of Italy processes the application and uploads it and submits it to the IPCC. So I can show again my slide.
So I don't understand from now. To the EP email CMCC
Yes.
will be the email address that the expert send the CV, the format template
Yes.
to this address. That's all, or I have to do other things?
No, you just send it to this address. This is the address for the Focal Point of Italy, and then we process the nomination. For other countries, you would have to contact.
Focal Point Italy is Navarra.
It's myself and Navarra, yes. So if you send it to this email address, we process it. Yes.
So but the question is, I have to send, or the expert has to send? That's the difference.
Okay, sorry. I thought you were an expert interested in applying. The expert, whoever is an expert that wants to nominate for this meeting, needs to send their nomination form and CV to the Focal Point. And the Focal Point, this is the address for Italy, ipcc.fp@cmcc.it. So I hope that's clear. Yeah.
No, it's not clear.
So every expert who's coming from a research institute.
Suppose that they have to.
I lost you. Sorry. I think maybe it's.
And so the template, each of us.
Can you repeat the question, please? Because the audio was missing. I didn't hear.
I repeat, I have 3 experts. Okay, I want to send. Each expert, EFP, the document 5 of July,
Yes.
okay?
Yes,
Each
please.
of them.
Yes. Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
after
please.
that,
After that, in this case, we are not able to process any applications. Okay. I hope that's clear, but Sebastiano, we can also discuss later to clarify further. I saw Antonio's name. We can listen to Antonio.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Can you hear me?
Yes. Quite faint, but please go ahead. Try again. Antonio, you're muted now.
Hello again?
Now it works.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, we would need probably, and that's probably what's going to happen. Like you're going to share, I guess, this link to the Excel nomination form or the presentation.
Sure. Yes, we can. I mean, we will put, this is all available on the Focal Point website.
Okay.
So if you, yeah.
And then we need to cover, okay, from internal funds, like this scoping meeting, 2-3 days, I guess it is, no? How many?
Maybe I can ask, I see Giacomo also is, I think, raised the hand. Giacomo, do you have any information? Is it a 3-day meeting or 4-day meeting that is expected?
Giacomo, you're muted, sorry.
You're muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I think it is 3 days, usually a 3 days meeting, but has to be confirmed. I see a few questions in the chat. I don't know if you...
Yes, I was going to ask you, in fact, maybe Maria Cinzia's email, Cinzia's message. Would you like to start with this one? It's saying, you highlighted that as it's common to have different concepts and definitions in models and inventories, especially in land-based greenhouse gas emissions and removals, how will this IPCC methodology report position itself in relation to these definitions? Will it provide guidance only for inventories, or will it also set the ground, like trying to reconcile concepts in models? So really good question.
Yes, thank you very much. Very good question. So we don't expect that the CDR methodological report will enter into that specific topic specifically. The CDR will enter where we will work the methodological report will elaborate methods where methods do not exist or they are considered, an update of this method is considered necessary. For the land sector, there is general understanding that will be further discussed during the actual meeting that the methodologies for the land sector, even if imperfect and a bit uncertain, but reflect the current state of science. So there is no expectation that further methodological guidance will be provided for the land sector, especially on these differences between global models and inventory, because the main point is that national inventories are based on observation, usually like national forest inventory, and observation cannot separate the anthropogenic and natural component in the same way models do. So probably this discussion will pop up during the expert meeting next week and during the scoping meeting in October. But the likely outcome is that they will not enter in the scoping meeting. The scoping meeting will touch maybe specific aspect related to land use or biogenic carbon, like biochar, for example, or coastal wetlands, where some more guidance is needed. But for the forestry, the land, most of the land sector, there is a general understanding, I would say, that it is mature, quite mature, the guidance. But this is a topic that will be further discussed. It will be further discussed during the expert meeting I mentioned that will hold in 2 weeks' time here in Spain.
Okay, thank you, Giacomo. And there are a few questions, but very briefly, if you could also answer the other question from Cinzia. She's asking about the relation of this methodology report to topics in the UNFCCC negotiations. So, for example, Article 6 guidelines for removals, or Article 2 on voluntary cooperative approaches between parties. I mean, do you have a sense of how this report will be feeding into those processes?
Thank you. Also, good question. I think that it will feed into that. I mean, there are a number of, I guess this is my guess, but there are a number of activities that are potentially eligible under Article 6, for which there is no guidance, a number of CDR and CCUS activities. So the methodological report is specifically aimed to fill this gap primarily for the national inventory compilers, but indirectly, I would say also in the context of is applicability extends to Article 6, I would say.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope, Cinzia, these questions are sufficient. These answers are sufficient for you. I remind everyone that if you do have other questions, please put them in the questions and answers. We only have a few minutes. We might not reach all of them, but if you do put them in, we can always try and respond with some written summary of the questions afterwards, make them available with the recording of the webinar. I will just pick up on a few. Cinzia is happy. I see that. Thank you. I see a few questions which I maybe can answer. Fabio is asking, what is experience with IPCC referring to? You'll find this in the Excel form. There is a question, do you have experience with IPCC? And you would say the answer is yes, some, no. In actual fact, what do they mean? They mean experience as an author, so particularly participating in the preparation of one of the IPCC reports. Then the some experience is in relation to, for example, being a reviewer or contributing author. They don't count the role of being, for example, a UNFCCC expert reviewer for the inventories. That would fit outside of this question, but you can highlight this experience in your CV. I think it's certainly a very relevant experience to highlight via your CV. Then there is a question from Chiara, coming back to similar questions from Anna about candidates that are coming from industry or from, in Chiara's case, she's working at a startup related to DAX, and whether this experience coming from emerging companies could be significant for the scoping meeting, or perhaps companies which have more experience in the field. I think this is not, I mean, maybe Giacomo has an opinion, but it would be something that would be evaluated by the Bureau of the Task Force. I would say it's too early for us to say, yes, they will prefer those coming from more established companies. There may be a perspective that those coming from emerging companies is certainly important in this field, in this particular field. So I would go ahead and apply if you're interested in taking part in this meeting. And I would say that it'll be part of the overall evaluation of the applicants, how they are selected in the end. So it depends on what other applications are coming from the industry sectors and making a balance overall. So please don't feel discouraged. It would be interesting for you to apply perhaps. Then there's a question from Joseph, and it's very nice, Joseph, that you have joined us. You're listening from Ghana. And you're flagging an issue which can exist. So, for example, a national focal point is not responsive. In that case, what should you do? First of all, you can try to contact the IPCC Secretariat and check that you have the correct details, the most up-to-date details for the focal point in your country. And I'm just about to copy into the chat the email address of let me see, of the IPCC Secretariat. So I put the email address here. Another way forward is also to be nominated by an observer organization. So on the IPCC website, you will find the list of focal points, national focal points. I'm just going to bring this up so I can share with you the link. Let's see, I can do this relatively quickly. So here you see, I hope you see the answers to this question, everybody. Let me reply here. So first of all, I'm going to put the link for the national focal points. You can check to see if you have the right name. And then I will put the list of observer organizations. So you're also able to be nominated by an observer organization. So see how this goes. If you have any further questions, Joseph, please let me know. Happy to help try and make the connections happen. I saw there was a hand from Chiara. Do you want to come in? Or was it, here you go, please.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
I just raised the hand by mistake because it just replied to my question. So
Okay.
thank you so much.
Okay, no problem. So everything's fine.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, welcome. So there are a couple of minutes still. If anybody has another question, you're welcome to ask. Check in the chat. It seems there are no more questions at the moment. Giacomo, if you have anything else to add at this stage, we maybe wrap up. So just to reiterate, maybe I will repeat the information on the nominations. Let's see if I have the right one. So, Sebastiano, you've raised your hand.
So I understand this. Each expert shall send to email, that email, the CV
Yes.
and the other documentation template and so on and so forth.
Yes, yes.
The same documentation shall be sent to you and Navarra as
No.
focal point?
No, there's no need. This is a coordinated inbox. And for us, administratively, it's much more simple if all nominations are sent through the general IPCC Focal Point for Italy email address. If we receive emails directly, we do obviously coordinate them into the process, but for administratively, it's much easier for us to centralize the nominations. So please use the IPCC Focal Point for Italy email address if you're an expert from Italy. And I reiterate the deadline. It's the 5th of July, 2024. It's soon. Please reflect if you would like to participate, if you should be available in the second half of October. Unfortunately, we do not have the dates at the moment. Usually it's quite a competitive selection. So if you apply and are selected, it's important that you are available in the end. It would be a pity to pull out because others will have been left out of that selection. And it can be difficult to replace candidates who are in the end not available. So I hope this webinar was useful for you all. If you have any other questions, you are welcome to email again to the IPCC Focal Point.
Can I write?
Yes, you're welcome to.
Okay, that's it would be clear for me to do what to do. I don't think to be an expert, but I would like to send the expert to you. That's my
Absolutely.
point.
That would be wonderful.
Okay.
Yes.
So
yes.
if the procedure is correct, we will send the nomination to they send themselves the nomination.
Yes.
Okay.
That would be excellent. Yes, please. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
I understand. I'm not an expert. I have many political other things to do.
But thank you. No, it's very nice. This is exactly what is important, to connect the relevant experts who you think would be relevant. That's exactly what we need.
That's one point, because otherwise we lose what scientific and technical point of view we have to look at.
Yes,
well,
exactly.
This thing, the removal is a very important process. I think. I thought that was too late to 2029. It should be before, I think so.
Well,
Because
well,
we
this-
have
Yes.
before to have a guideline for that
This,
part of the process.
Yes,
Otherwise,
I mean,
you know,
this process will finish by 2027. So this methodology report will be available in 2027. But you saw the very sort of formal iterative process to develop the IPCC products. And this is very important then for the information that the IPCC delivers. It's very robust and has been comprehensively reviewed. So it certainly takes a couple of years to produce these reports.
Sure.
Yeah.
It takes time, you say.
Yeah, it does. But
Okay.
thank you very much,
to you.
everybody. Thank you, Sebastiano. Thank you, everybody who joined. We hope this was useful and that you're motivated to participate in this process. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email the Focal Point of Italy, and one of us will respond. I'm happy to respond. Thank you, Giacomo, for joining us as our resident elected bureau member of the Task Force on Greenhouse Gas Inventories. Very proud to have Giacomo.
Thank you. Thank you for the excellent seminar.
Bye bye, everybody. Have a lovely weekend.
Bye.
Arrivederci, grazie.